Hello, BookTube. This is a continuation of the third bookcase, the third bookshelf, and the second part of that third bookshelf. So let's start off with Men of Honor, Trafalgar, and the Making of the English Hero by Adam Nicholson. The end papers. This is HarperCollins Publishers, and it's a British edition, and it's from 2005. The author, Mr. Nicholson, is the author of many books on history, travel, and the environment. He's winner of the Somerset Maugham Award, the British Topography Prize, and the W.H. Heinemann Award. He lives on a farm in Sussex. This is his fourth book for HarperCollins. His previous three being Sea Room, Power and Glory, and Seamanship. He's a wonderful, wonderful writer. Here we go. It's well illustrated. Some of the players in the drama. So, Men of Honor, Adam Nicholson takes the Battle of Trafalgar, fought between the British and Franco-Spanish fleets in October 1805, and uses it to examine our idea, I'm a Vermonter, I say idea instead of idea, of heroism and the heroic. Is violence an essential part of the hero? And daring? Why did the cult of the hero flower in the late 18th and early 19th centuries in a way it hadn't for 200 years? Was the figure of Nelson, charming, impetuous, considerate, indifferent to death and danger, inspirational to those around him? And so he takes this battle and that idea, and he just weaves a wonderful tale. A very, very good book. I'd recommend highly. Our next one is The Wreck of the Bark Stefano off the northwest coast of northwest Cape of Australia in 1875 by Gustav Rathi. Farrar, Straus and Giroux, New York. This is from 1992. Gustav Rathi served in the U.S. Navy in the South Pacific during World War II. He's a former IBM executive. He lives in Keswick, Virginia. Well, this is the story of this wreck. Here's some color. Oh, that's actually the author with his mother. So the Bark Stefano runs aground, and 16-year-old Miho Botchit's thrilling adventure is over. The adventure being to go to sea. Although 10 of the 17-man crew struggled ashore, it's soon clear that their greatest challenge was not surviving the sea. The northwest Cape of Australia is barren, plagued by heat and cyclones, and after 3 desperate months, all but 2 of the sailors have starved to death. Pretty intense story. Next one here is Piracy, Greed, and Betrayal in Colonial New England, and the title is Quelch's Gold by Clifford Beale. In May 1704, an 80-ton brigantine, the Charles, quietly slipped into the cove at Marblehead, Massachusetts. Her sudden and unexpected appearance, some 10 months after she left Marblehead under mysterious circumstances, caused quite a stir in the town. During the following 3 weeks, the drama played out involving the crew of the Charles, her commander John Quelch, and the colonial governments of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. In the hold of the Charles lay large quantities of Brazilian sugar, hides, cloths, guns, and gold dust, and coins worth more than 10,000 pounds sterling. Or 10,000 sterling, excuse me. A huge fortune for the time. This booty and the circumstances of the ship's voyage led to Quelch's arrest on charges of piracy and murder against the subject of Queen Anne's newest ally, the King of Portugal. The trial and its consequences were dramatic and tragic for Quelch, He became a man caught up in a political world he no longer understood. Legend has it that the crew buried some of the treasure off the island's coast. Treasure hunters flock every summer to this day in search of Quelch's gold. So, the treasure story. This is being hanged, unfortunately. The next one here, Skeletons on the Sahara. We've heard of Dean King before when we talked to some of these guidebooks about Patrick O'Brian. This is a true story of survival, a non-fiction work by Mr. King. There he is right there in the end papers. See if I can get that a little better. He also did a biography of Patrick O'Brian. So, Skeleton of the Sahara, a true story of survival, Dean King, Little Brown and Company, New York and Boston, 2004. On a calm May morning, 1815, Captain James Riley and the crew of the Commerce left port in Connecticut for an ordinary trading voyage. They would have never imagined what awaited them. Their nightmare began with a dreadful shipwreck off the coast of Africa. A hair-raising confrontation with hostile native tribesmen within hours of being washed ashore, and a hellish confinement in a rickety longboat as they tried, without success, to escape the fearsome coast. Eventually captured by desert nomads and sold into slavery, Riley and his men were dragged along on an insane journey through the bone-dry heart of the Sahara, a region unknown to Westerners. Along the way, the Americans would encounter everything that could possibly test them: barbarism, murder, starvation, plagues of locusts, death, sandstorms that lasted for days, dehydration, and hostile tribes that roamed the desert in armies of camels. They would discover ancient cities and secret oases. They would also discover a surprising bond between a Muslim trader and an American sea captain. Men who began as strangers were forced to become allies in order to survive, and in the tempering heat of the desert became friends, even as the captain hatched a daring betrayal in order to save his men. Wonderful book. And next, we have Patriot Pirates, The Privateer War for Freedom and Fortune in the American Revolution by Robert H. Patton. This one, Pantheon Books, New York, 2008. Let's see. Robert H. Patton graduated from Brown University and Northwestern University. He's the author of The Pattons, A Personal History of the American Family. And he lives with his wife in Darien, Connecticut, or did when this book was written. They were legalized pirates, empowered by the Continental Congress to raid and plunder at their own considerable risk as much enemy trade as they could successfully haul back to American shores. They played a central role in America's struggle for independence and later turned their seafaring talents to the slave trade, embodying the conflict between enterprise and morality, central to the American psyche. Let's go to the book. Next is an old volume, and it looks it, and it feels it. It is Sailing Ships and Their Story by E. Keble Chatterton. New edition with an additional chapter, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott and Company. It was first published in 1909. Reprinted in 1914, and then this edition with the chapter 10 added is from 1923. This is just so much fun. I mean, I love the illustrations. Viking boat dug up at Brigg, Lincolnshire. And all my British friends will tell me if I pronounce that right or wrong. So it's a history of ships. An old history of ships. This one's Below the Convergence, Voyages Towards Antarctica from 1699 to 1839 by Alan Gurney. Take a look at it here. Get in the light a little better. Yeah, that's probably a little better. It's a paperback. W. Norton and Company, New York and London, 1997. First published as a Norton paperback in 2007, which is what this is. Some maps, which are always helpful in these books. I mean, these. For centuries, Antarctica was a fabled land. Drawn by rumors of a tropical paradise, explorers, monarchs, and scientists sent forth on daring expeditions to discover what, if anything, lay at the Earth's southernmost point. These adventurous seamen were the first to explore and exploit a new continent, which was not the verdant southern island they imagined, but an inhospitable expanse of rock and snow ringed by pack ice. Their thrilling stories captivated their countrymen who longed to know what lay below the convergence, the ocean frontier that marks the boundary between the freezing Antarctic waters and the warmer sub-Antarctic waters. And below the convergence, Alan Gurney tells the story of these fearless pioneers, from the astronomer Edward Halley in his 1699 voyage in the Paramour to sailor John Bellamy's 1839 excursion in the Eliza Scott, while sharing fascinating accounts of the brutal voyages that put this continent on the map. This detailed, thrilling history, wrote David Sobel in the New York Times Book Review, introduces the concept of a deep cold with lyrical precision. Then, this is The Two Ocean War, A Short History of the United States Navy in the Second World War by Samuel Eliot Morison, one of my favorite historians. And he wrote a 15-volume history of the United States naval operations in World War II. This is a single volume that is based on that history, I guess. It's not a condensed. It's its own thing. So if you're into World War II and naval stuff, this is a must-have. Let's see if I can do this without ruining the map. So you have fold-out maps. So Samuel Eliot Morison wrote some amazing stuff. He was a historian, I think, of the First Order. Here he is. He actually served. He was a professor at Harvard, but he was commissioned in World War II, and he did in the Navy as a historian. And this is a great book. Great fun. I don't have the 15-volume set. Every once in a while you'll see it reprinted. And I probably would, if I had the opportunity, would start collecting it. And then finally, the final and probably the nicest books of the whole shelf. Some of the nicest of the maritime books. Also, Samuel Eliot Morison. So, I want to do them in a logical order here. These are Easton Press editions. Quite beautifully done. Silk and papers. At the silk marker. His first one. Let me start here with a map of the Caribbean. So, journals and other documents on the life and voyages of Christopher Columbus. Translated and edited by Samuel Eliot Morison. Illustrated by Lima de Freitas. Special 500th anniversary edition, bound in genuine leather. The Easton Press, Norwalk, Connecticut. The original volume was published in 1963 by Samuel Eliot Morison. Here, take a look at this. And this thing is what it says it is. I mean, these are the Look at that. So all throughout. And this book, it's beautiful artwork, is supports the 2 volumes that go with it. So these are journals and other documents. But this is a 2-volume set. Very similar. Well, slightly small. I think I can show you this. So if yeah, a little bit smaller. So here's volume 1 right here. Again, genuine leather, page marker, absolutely gorgeous end papers. The Admiral of the Ocean Sea, A Life of Christopher Columbus by Samuel Eliot Morison, Volume 1, with an introduction by William F. Buckley, Jr., maps by Irwin Rice, drawings by Bertram Green, special 500th anniversary edition, bound in genuine leather, the Eastern Press, Norwalk, Connecticut. I actually bought these at a book sale. Spent a few bucks on them, actually, more than I normally spend at a book sale, but I just, sometimes you see things and you gotta bite the bullet a little bit, get what you want. So Mr. Morison actually sailed and did everything to try to deal with all the details in Columbus's voyages. And Morison was a real sailor too, as well as being a first-rate historian. Then you've got volume 2. I just finished volume 1. I am just about to start volume 2, and I've read tons of Morison. So here's the front of. Being a sailor, he doesn't make the mistakes that some armchair historians might make. He's very trustworthy. I very much admire his writing, and we'll see a lot more of it on some other shelves, some of the American history shelves, so things like that. But that completes Bookcase 3, Shelf 3. So we ended up with some nice Eastern Press on the end of the shelf. So thank you, BookTube.